everyone. Let me just share this link. All right, I'll give everyone a few minutes to show up in here. Just gonna mark out a few things. Hope you're all doing well this morning. Nice volume there. Yeah, so I pointed out, I fell back asleep, but this actually would have been quite a nice short into the New York Open. This rejection here off the local golden pocket, bearish absorption. Certainly for a scalp short, if you're just trading this as a range, looking for longs and shorts. But here we are. We've broken down the range. We rallied back into this wick, but rejected kind of from these lows. We're kind of retesting this low. I'll point out that we formed some bearish absorption on this rally up locally. And why are this local bearish absorption or bullish absorption doesn't really tell you where price is going to go. Well, in one hand, it doesn't tell you where price will go generally. It gives you some clues, but it doesn't tell you anything high time frame. It just tells you what's starting to happen here. So if we go over to this, we can see that as price was pushing up, we started forming bearish absorption up here. So this is just the 1 minute chart, but this does tell you that even on this local rally, you're less likely to see continuation, more likely to see a local retracement. And because these are local divergences on the 1 minute chart, they can change very quickly. So as we come down, retrace into the local golden pocket, we start to see a little bit of local bullish absorption. We kind of, the lows aren't very far away, so could certainly just sweep those again. But anyways, I just thought that we'd watch this on a low time frame and see what clues we have to whether or not we might see a reversal or not. But we do have a little bit of local bullish absorption forming now, and it's worth pointing out that we are at the golden pocket locally. I can go to the 1 minute to make it a little bit more clear. It's just pulled from this rally to here. So arguably, you know, if you start to see some strength come in here, that could be a long trigger. If you're really aggressive, you could just long the top of the golden pocket with a slight bullish absorption. Using, and when you're looking at CVD like that, you're using your CVD as your confirmation instead of price action. So you're trading levels, understanding that price likes to move around these levels. We had a really good example of that yesterday when we grinded up on golden pocket retracements over and over and over again, like this. Golden pocket, golden pocket. Just came through it a little bit. Just didn't quite reach it. But those low time golden pockets can get a reaction. So you can use divergences to sort of give you some clues. But it's just worth noting that really low time frame bullish absorption at a level like this, I mean, it can get washed out pretty quick. So you're always using risk management if you're trading that way. But we certainly have a little bit. And we can see down here 3.6 million negative delta in this candle. Mostly longs getting stopped out at the golden pocket. Negative delta here. So that negative delta is just what's causing that CVD line to go down, because that line, CVD line, is just a line version of this data. But we can see in the session, our cumulative volume delta went from positive 17, 18 million at the peak here, and has plummeted down to negative 17 million. And that's these big negative delta candles, negative delta of 5.7 million, negative delta of 26 million, has shifted our cumulative volume delta into the negative for this session. Yeah, hold on. So Crane says, I'll explain this for a second. So Crane's pointing out that he notices when you go to the 5-minute chart, you can there's bigger bullish absorption here. I'll point that out in a second, versus the 1-minute chart, and you will notice that. So if you go to different time frames, although in Coin Analyze that makes the line resize, the CVD will look a little different, and that's because you have it's calculating all of the delta in these time frames, and especially this last candle here, you have a developing candle, so you'll see the CVD shifting up until that candle closes. And it usually is a good idea. Like, you can look at really low time frame absorption, like on the 1-minute chart, to kind of get an idea of what's happening between two highs here to here over 5 minutes. But usually looking at the 5 and 15-minute chart does give you a clearer picture. But sometimes you'll see this line shift up and down quite a lot. Let me turn off the speaker. As that candle develops. I'm on the 5-minute, right? Yeah. So we have bullish absorption forming locally. But you could just wait for, certainly, a sign of strength. I'll switch back to trading view here for a second. You know, we have little liquidity ideas here of sweeping this wick. But you certainly would want to wait for, even, you know, technically you could look for, like, the lowest time frame idea here is just a swing failure of these lows as an entry. So a reclaim of these lows, but just keep an eye on order flow. Be aware that we have bullish absorption forming. Another way you can look at it too is here in the footprints bar statistics. You have a cumulative volume delta of negative 14 million at this low in this candle, and negative 19 million in this candle. So that tells you there's a divergence, right? There's an extra 4 million to the negative. It's always interesting just to note if we get a rally here off of bullish absorption. Always something to be aware of. I would say this is certainly a critical point in this move, right? As to whether we can hold a higher low here locally, sustain some of this selling pressure, and a rally here makes it relatively likely that we continue up into the range. So we can see all that selling pressure on this side here. 519K at the lows, 485, 367, starting to see some strength. And so this is where I would personally start looking for longs. Starting to see some strength off bullish absorption locally, seeing the selling pressure getting absorbed. We have the big liquidity grab here where we wiped out all of these longs. Wouldn't mind seeing a little more shorts opening. But you can see this big imbalance between selling and buying coming in here on this retracement. I always forget to do this when I'm live, but I will update in the Discord that I'm taking along here. I guess I need to, whatever. Better just to give the update. Oh, my Discord's frozen. Yeah, I was trying to align my my update with my where price was at the time, but yeah, sometimes you're trying to align things and get the update out and price is moving away from you. Now this is, I mean, this is an aggressive entry. It's quite, arguably speculative. But the setup here is quite clear, which is just you have a sweep of the range lows, you have a retracement, you have local bullish absorption, and so hey, that can be a scalp entry for me, and I have my invalidation, so I'm not worried about getting stopped out. If I do, that's okay. Understanding that if we see a move down, it's likely to continue. And the same thing would have been with this short up at the highs, right? You have very clear bearish absorption at the highs, and we are coming into the golden pocket here. And that would have been just a very nice short. No reason to think a whole lot about it. You see the rejection, you have bearish absorption right into the New York Open. Even on this high, we put in quite a big bearish divergence between these highs. As we swing failure this high, you can see huge bearish divergence. So those could be scalp shorts, certainly long targets for the range. And the other thing you kind of have going for you to some degree is that you can just anticipate once consolidation starts happening, that prices just becomes likely to range. So you can always use that to inform some of your decisions. But what would be, there's kind of two options here. You can be kind of afraid and you can say, well, I don't want to long this. What if price breaks down? Which is fine. You don't have to, if you're uncomfortable with an idea that you're looking at, you don't have to trade it. But say price just does this, and then in hindsight I would be saying, well, why didn't I long that. We have the liquidity sweep. We have bullish absorption on this retracement. You know, the invalidation's like 0.3%, 0.4% away. Why wouldn't I have taken a long there? And the answer would be because you're afraid that price is going to break down. But right now, the data supports some kind of move up. So to me, it makes sense just to take the long and not overthink it too much. And just use risk management and be okay with being stopped out. Brain's asking, what kind of coffee do you drink and how do you brew it? This is just one of those like pod coffees. It's like an espresso, and I added some hot water. Just quick and easy when you're getting a quick start to the day. You know, as someone's asking, do I look at order books? Occasionally. The thing is, there's such a problem with spoofing in crypto, which is illegal, but it's just, you wouldn't really find it in traditional markets. Well, you do, it does happen, but it's hidden better. But so you'll often see big orders getting put in and then pulled out of the books, and it's not. The reason I like CBD and looking at this is these are orders that are in the market, right? These are things that have already happened. They're in there, and you actually can infer the limit orders that are filling. So this is all market orders, but you can actually infer the limit orders are filling that have filled by the divergences. So I don't need to. I think it's the best way. You know, I'd rather know what actually is in the market, and make my decisions based on that. And yeah, I know it can be, you know, there's kind of like two ways this can play out, which is we rally, maybe we have a huge impulse, and then it's like, wow, you long the bottom, king. Or we could just dump, and then it's like, well, why would you have longed here? You know, we're breaking down, we're in a downtrend. This is, and that and that happens a lot. Is you know, especially when you're trading this style, is it the long, like a long from here looks amazing if you rally, and it looks stupid if you don't, right? It's like, well, why would you ever be longing this? Because look at this big downtrend we're in. And but I try not to think too much about all that stuff. I'm just trading. I'm explaining exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why it makes sense to me, and it's repeatable. And so, you know, there's no guarantees, but certainly to me, longs make sense here. We also have this nice descending channel idea. I don't have it drawn perfectly here, but it's pretty clean. Just kind of tabbing through a few things here. And this is even, you know, this is more speculative. Like the reason I wouldn't necessarily suggest, you know, that this be the primary way you look for entries is you don't have a range reclaim yet. So this is probably the most speculative way to get into a position here. you have a breakdown. You have a rejection really from the range, and you're just kind of playing order flow and then local levels. But nothing wrong with, you know, noting something like this and saying, hey, we have local bullish absorption, we're getting a bounce off a local level, and then just saying, I'm still gonna wait for a reclaim of higher. Jacob saying Bitcoin deviation of the range and impulse to 25 to 26K maybe. Maybe. I mean, we've got some ground to travel. So the whole idea here, of course, in rallying would be lots of people waiting for this level. So right now we have a lot of people shaking out of longs. We have a lot of people in shorts waiting for lower. And we have a lot of people waiting for lower to long. Structurally, it makes sense to come down to here. But the whole idea of rallying from here would be to leave these guys waiting, to leave these shorts without their profits, and rally, right? And then in hindsight, this all just becomes, let me just do this. This all just becomes a deviation and looking like just a SR retest of the highs, and it wouldn't look so bizarre in hindsight to say, hey, we just came down. Let me get rid of all these alerts. Sometimes I just like drag too many alerts around. But then, you know, in hindsight, we'd have to come a little lower, I guess, to test this. But you end up with something that just looks like a retest of the range highs and then a continuation, and it doesn't look so weird to rally from here when you do. I'm trying to look at some of these other, obviously the time frames are different, but other retracements. Like here, we front ran the golden pocket. I think this was a 786 retracement. But here there wasn't a lot of structure, right? Like at a certain point on this breakdown, it made sense to just think we're going to take this low because where's the structure here? And we kind of did rally out of thin air. But in hindsight, you say, oh, you know, maybe this makes sense. We kind of flipped this old high into support. And maybe that something like that happens here. But from a timing perspective, we could spend another 2 weeks ranging here before that happens. That's always one thing to consider, especially when you're thinking like, oh, should I take profits on a position? It's not unusual for us to spend a few days here, right? Ranging. If we are going to get a move. I would be curious to see what kind of extensions we have from here if we rally. That's a little interesting. So our 1618, we'd have to come down. I guess our 1618 extension would come right into the 618 from this high. I'm gonna do 2. So obviously my general concept for like high time frame levels that I'd like to see is I'd like to see the liquidity swept above these high. There's some major fibs up here at some point, whether from here or lower. And then come back down to this $19,200 region, which is our major point of control. It would be our major golden pocket at the same time. And it would be something like a 618 fib extension, for 1618 fib extension from here, but not quite. Now, of course, I'd kind of pointed out when we were testing the range highs here that although I'm looking for 26K, this is Bitcoin, so always wary of these this kind of structure where you just keep wiping out liquidity on your way up, and it's really choppy. And I wonder, what something like this looks like. Fractals are just oftentimes just good to get a reminder of how the market can move. This makes it quite annoying to trade for most people, right? When you have something like this. So the best case scenario for like a sharp reversal for longs here would be to get a pivot like this, right? Where we've come down. Here we did sweep minor liquidity. We had a little swing failure. But anyways, you can imagine a scenario where we get there with choppy price action and it becomes sort of a pain to trade along the way, especially when it starts with one strong impulse and then a minor retracement and then a lot of chop. A lot of people who even have the idea of getting along into this target end up unable to capture a lot of the move, if any of it. It's all very speculative at this point. But again, we can imagine some ideas here where price does see a sharp reversal. Always becomes good to just zoom out and just remember what price action looks like on the 4-hour chart. And then look here and say, you know, how crazy, how bearish is it? How wild is it to be looking for longs here? I don't know if it is particularly. Brains is asking if I drink any other kind of coffee, or any other way. I'm not. I'm definitely not a coffee snob, and not as a derogatory term. I know there's a lot of nuance to coffee, but I'm just, I can't. I just don't have the time usually to get into things very heavily. But sometimes I'll go and grab a Starbucks or something in the morning. But usually I don't have time. It's not uncommon for me to wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. a couple hours before the New York Open, mostly just because I don't sleep well. But when I do that and it looks like I have some time, I'll sometimes go out and grab a coffee. Yeah, do I have any gray hairs? I have way too many gray hairs for my age. I mean, when I look at my sleep data, it's like the average.
Here's what I found.
I talked to my watch when I looked at it. When I look at my sleep data, it's like 3.5 hours tonight, 4 hours, which isn't ideal. I'm in my mid-30s. I'll answer a few more questions like this, and then there's a few things I want to talk about on the charts. But how many years have I been sleeping 3 to 4 hours? I've had, I've had it's probably like medical grade insomnia since I was young, a kid. So the other thing to kind of think about here is, how likely is it really to long the low of a move? And the reality is, and this is why people say, don't try long at the bottom. With a few exceptions, I think, obviously had a long from here. It's a pretty clear, long. You have on the 4 hour chart a major low put in, you're in a range, you're long the lows of the range, and you're at major lows. That has a better chance of being a low. On a retracements, it's quite unlikely in some sense that you're going to long on the 5-minute chart the exact low of a major pivot. And so you should always keep that in mind when you start to see some bearish signs that, hey, you know what? It's not likely that that position is the absolute pivot low long. It's not likely it's the absolute pivot high short. So should I take some profits from this position? Now, it's not to say it can't be done, and I've been fortunate over the last couple years to have found some major pivot high shorts and longs with a plan, right? Like this 786 short with a big harmonic here. That was one that I was waiting for literally months. And this short here at 25K. So sometimes you have really strong ideas where you're like, hey, I'm waiting for this exact level for weeks or months, and I'm going to short it. It's going to be a swing. And then price just goes in your favor dramatically. But that's not usually the case because price doesn't make major highs and lows every day. They're very rare. So most trades, by definition, are not going to be from major highs and lows. And that's where I think some people get a little lost in their trading strategy, which is they're trying to treat every trade like it's going to run as a long or short from a major high or low. So we do need to start reclaiming some of this resistance, because right now the really the perspective is that we're re-entering this range. So these are the previous range highs, and this is a range, and currently it's on a low time frame. We can obviously break back into these highs here, but currently we're deviating back into this old range. And if we get accepted back into it, well, then we're back in this range. And we can start paying attention to all the levels here. Just for fun, we can start marking them out. Get rid of some of this. I don't know. Let's do this. Part of me would just prefer, usually, I just want to, not saying that you necessarily would trade a swing filler of all these levels, but I want to be aware as I'm interacting with price here, if we come down here, with every one of these pivots. No structure here to mark, but really just being aware of all of this structure is probably a good idea. It might make sense for some of the reactions we get. I'm not going to mark this one because it's so close to this low, and it's not like I would probably take a trade off a sweep of this low, reclaim, but not a reclaim of this low. So and I'm going to put that in a folder and name it I'm in TradingView. Obviously, you know, we do have some more local bullish absorption here, potentially, on this retracement. But I also don't like to neglect just levels. You know, clean interaction with levels, and because price action can be very clean. So I don't like to ignore this. Because here we were kind of washing around the level, but this is a very clean pivot off that level, which is arguably, I want to make sure I have this pulled accurately as well. Yeah, that looks pretty clean, but I'm going to snap it to it. Because what can happen here is we have kind of two high time frame ideas that we're contending with here. we have the old range high that we're getting accepted back into the range, and we have the retest of this high sitting right below us. Certainly interested to see how this all unfolds. Still with bullish absorption between these lows. But certainly looking a little more likely that we sweep them. So we just watch. So if you think about it like this, there's all these traders in the market right now, right? Like some people are waiting, some people are putting on positions, long, shorts, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be thinking, you know, price should be coming down to here, right? And as there's weakness in price, people are going to want to open shorts, targeting lower. And so the whole point of looking at absorption is, well, we may go down there, but maybe it takes a while, or maybe it never happens. And if price is being absorbed, all those people who are shorting this clear bearish trend breakdown might just get wrecked first. And that's what I'm trying to long, right? And I'm looking for signs that that is indeed the case. Here, let's pop over to, and we can see here more bullish absorption. Because oftentimes what will happen with price, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, is price will go where it seems somewhat obvious that it was going to go. And in hindsight, whether we get to these lows or we break down from there or we see 26K, in the end, it's going to look quite obvious. But it gets there in a way that's very unpredictable and hard to trade. So that's kind of the nature of price action, is it generally kind of goes where you might think it would go, but it gets there in such a way that you don't find a way to trade it. And the example here would be, you know, and I'm not saying that this will happen. I'm just saying people shorting this breakdown, targeting lower, and then they get squeezed out. They close all their shorts, and we reject from a local fib. And then as price starts coming down, they say, I should have just left my short open. I knew we were going down there. They short again. Price stops them out again. They short again. Price rallies. And now they flip long and they say, oh, I knew you know, I should have never shorted that. I should have seen all the signs of strength. And then price does this, and they don't short anything, and they long every retracement, and then it finally goes where they thought it was going to go, but it gets there in such a way that they've been caught offside 3 or 4 times before they actually flip bias and then start longing against their original idea, and price gets there. So I'm sort of looking for entries to counter trade that sort of concept using the bullish absorption. But again, the price action here, which is one of the reasons that I kind of like the trade, but also something to be wary of, is quite bearish. This is quite bearish. Like that, you know, the order flow, there's some bullish absorption, but the actual price action itself, even here locally, kind of grinding down. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who notices that. After I get off live stream, Steve, I've actually shared all the templates. I think they're actually pinned in one of the channels, so I'll find that and link to you. The Excel charts templates. But yeah, I might see what happens here, and if we can get some direction. I do think we're going to sweep this low again, frankly. Even with the bullish absorption. But time will tell. It would be technically much cleaner if we could come and sweep this low, even for a reversal, because then we have a perfect test of that old major high. But maybe that's just too clean. Mark says, normally as you're waiting for the move, would you be scanning a variety of other coins? No. Like if I'm here and I'm looking to trade, like, and price is just flirting around this level, that's not when I'm going to be going and doing a bunch of analysis on other coins. Usually I'm doing that days or weeks before I'm even trading the levels that I'm trading, and I have alerts set and everything in folders. I really don't think it makes sense to be doing a ton of analysis while you're actively trading. Like you're at your entry, you know, especially if you're taking scalp entries, to be then just going flipping through and looking at a ton of other things to do analysis on. Especially because these moves can happen so quick. Like price could come down and then 1 minute later be back up here, right? But I'm just looking at kind of shorts we've got coming in here. Certainly some. A few $1 million of shorts have opened on this other retest here. Bullish absorption. The thing is, we can always just leave that level for later. We can rally off this bullish absorption, maybe break the downtrend. And that's, I've talked about this a lot, but ranges are one of the most common types of price action. Price is typically ranging. And in hindsight, even when price was coming down here, I was saying, well, probably the most likely outcome is a range. We never took that range high again. But we form a range, and this just absolutely wrecks people. Because people long the highs of the range, they short the lows, long the highs, short the lows, long the highs. Deviations from the range. Everyone gets stopped out. People break down short, back into the range. And in hindsight, it just looks like, oh man, it was so obvious. We're just in a range. But and that's usually the case. But everyone's always expecting the range to break on every move. They never really account for deviations. They never account for staying range bound, which is kind of must be deep in our psychology because, of course, that's what price is almost always doing. So you would think we would expect it as the most likely outcome. Do I compare the DXY chart with Bitcoin in order to check if they do opposite moves? Well, yeah, they do have an inverse correlation. I tracked the DXY on a higher time frame. And so one thing I do, especially since I use CVD, is I don't like to, if I have a technical idea and I have like a bullish divergence here, bullish absorption, well, I prefer to take the trade, and even though I think like, hey man, it looks likely we take this low, what data do I actually have to support that? That's kind of, in a way, emotional thinking. There's a little bit of psychology in there. It's like, well, shouldn't we wreck these longs again? I mean, we've obviously been wrecking longs. Shouldn't we tap that old range high? And, prices going down towards it. You just can't imagine, in some ways, price just pivoting and bouncing here. But if I have bullish absorption, I don't really need to guess. I have I have an idea for an entry. I have invalidation. And if we reclaim the level, I can reopen my long. But what happens, and you know, you don't necessarily have to be trying to do this on this time frame and on this type of idea, but what happens is when you don't take an entry based on a technical trigger with whatever the system you're using is, because you just think, I think we will go lower, then you can end up in a really awkward position if price goes like that, and you're kind of trying to chase an entry, and then maybe you do just try to enter where you can, and then we swing failure, and it just gets kind of weird. So I always prefer not to try to guess too much what's going to happen. But if I see this, and there's a huge bearish divergence, well, then I'm going to close enough of my trade to make it break even and move my stop up, and I'll look for a different entry because the context has changed there. The question, can I look at ETH and compare it to Bitcoin? Yeah, well, ETH is sort of just very similar to Bitcoin's local structure. You know, we have, let me go to the 15-minute here. We have a range, we had a low, we took the low. Now we're looking to see if we can reclaim that low. And ETH is really just in the exact same structural position here. We have a range, we have a low, and now ETH is looking to see if we can reclaim that low. So the structure is identical to Bitcoin's on a higher time frame. We haven't swept the major low, but we did sweep another low. And we'll just point out that expecting ETH and all alts to move with Bitcoin. So if you're seeing big bullish absorption on ETH or big bearish absorption on Bitcoin, and you're also in other positions, well, you have to consider that if up here Bitcoin is showing major bearish absorption and is going to move down through the range lows, well, what's ETH likely to do? Probably the same thing. And a lot of people ask me, like, I'll look at ETH CVD, but most other alts I won't even look at. And people will ask me if I do. And typically I trade technical levels on ETH with Bitcoin as confluence, as Bitcoin coming to technical support or resistance. And I'll use Bitcoin CVD to inform my opinion on alts. Because you could look at any alts here, and you're going to find that the timeline of this high aligns with Bitcoin's high, the low with the low. If it's Doge, and it's very rare that you're going to see, like here where Bitcoin made its high and retraced, that Doge went up, right? It happens, but it's rare. And so, you know, everything's putting in its high. It's obviously the technical levels are going to be different. The structure can be different. You know, maybe this is a 786, maybe something else is a 618, maybe something else is swing failuring. The structure can be different, but typically the timing around the pivots is the same. And so understanding that, you can usually just use Bitcoin as a bit of an indicator for other things. And if we get a move up into the range here, I am going to wrap up the live stream because I have a long day ahead of me. And so, you know, I like to use my time efficiently. All right. So I'm going to answer Man Steve's question here. He said, if you have to rank your setups based on probabilities, how would you rate them? Retracements, CVD, channels, swing failures, etc. Well, typically I'm looking to put them all together. So here I have a channel, I have a swing failure, I have bullish CVD absorption, I have a key fib retracement, and I'm trying to put all those together. So I'm not usually trying to just trade one of those ideas. There is a confluence of ideas here, which is we tap the lows to the descending channel, we're getting a bounce, we're getting a retracement, we're getting bullish CVD, and we have a swing failure idea as well. So I don't really know if I would necessarily say I have an answer to that question the way you asked it, because I'm usually not trading one of those things in isolation from the other. I'm trying to use them as confluent ideas. No bearish absorption here locally yet, but well, just kind of neutral at the highs. The other thing that one of the things that makes me like this as a potential major low is just the fact that I don't think anyone is trading this as a major low. So I just don't see, this isn't really particularly an idea that you see on Twitter all the time or anyone talking about, even just this idea of, say, like, everyone's waiting for this. No one's really saying, if we break this range low, we have this major idea of retesting the old range highs and then a continuation. I think everyone's quite bearish here, generally, and lots of longs are waiting for lower. And so the thing that's nice about that is all these people who get caught not in positions, if we do rally, then they're forced into the market higher, which can help drive price up. And everyone who is expecting lower, who is short, is shorting every rally because this level needs to be tapped. So you kind of have a perfect storm of people's bias slowly shifting that they're not going to see their level, so they're piling in long, and other people not believing any rally because, well, of course we need to see this level because we've broken down here. Which even I would say this is likely to some degree, but we do just kind of have a critical idea here that's worth maybe looking at and putting a little bit of risk in the market for. If you can find some nice, clean, tight entries, that's okay. Ultimately, generally happy with my entry here so far, although my preference is for price to move away from my entry quicker. So I would have much rather seen this. And as price starts meandering, certainly you have to ask yourself, why isn't price making the move? But as we do have bullish absorption here, I'm happy to sit in my position. If we were developing bearish absorption here, I'd just close it and wait for probably a sweep of these lows. I do think I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, I think volume is relatively flat. Um, but it's nowhere near as flat as it was last night, where you have like 3 million volume in 30-minute candles. These are 5-minute candles. And you do have to consider that in this little chunk of price action, you know, about 80 million volume exchange hands here. It's going to have lots of people waiting to short a break of this level. You would see a lot of volume coming in there, and then lots of, well, I don't know if you'd have lots of long stops here. You'd have some, certainly, as a range develops. And that's really why you want price to move away quickly from your position, is because as ranges develop, more and more positions open, and which means more and more longs are going to be opening, and everyone's putting their stops under here. And so, and eventually it generates enough liquidity in a tight range to be worth grabbing, and it becomes much more likely price will grab it again. And so you really do want to see, if we swing failure here and there's a, you long the swing failure of this low, you want to see price move quickly away from your entry and not just get locked in a range again, because it's likely going to sweep that low again. I wouldn't necessarily say we've been ranging here for a long time, but I definitely think we're in that critical point where we either want to see a move up or this liquidity is going to get swept. But that should be able to, you should have some warning in the order flow. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up this live stream. I am going to just go over the basic concepts here before I do, and I'm going to be updating things in Discord. So we go over to Coin Allies here. We can see we have bullish absorption on the 5-minute here. That's very clear. CVD is making lower lows. Price is not making lower lows. We had a little bit of bearish absorption on this push up, and of course that's played out locally. We are aware of our major levels we need to reclaim as a sign of strength. And if we start pushing up, whether it's through this high or to these highs, and we start forming major bearish absorption, well, then it becomes much more likely again that locally we see another retracement. But we don't have that data yet. And I do know it can be frustrating for people who just want to get in a position and don't want to have to think about it, and they just want price to go in their favor. But that's just not the reality of things. We have tools to help us inform some of our bias and our directional bias that we can put in our favor, but new data gives us a new perspective. So right now, CVD favors a move up. CVD favored a move up down at these range lows, but at the range highs it favored a move down because we had bearish absorption. So things can change quickly, but I do think right now it's likely we see some sort of move up, always looking at local fibs as well. Let me go to TradingView really quick. So let's go to the 15-minute chart here. I'd say local golden pocket comes in right above this wick, so that's always a level to watch locally. And things like that can just generate a swing failure and then give you your retest of the range highs. And so we'll see. But I'll be updating things in the Discord. I definitely, I was going to probably take a long here on this bullish absorption, which I did. I thought it would be nice to be live when I did that and just kind of talk about my thought process there, because obviously, it could have gone either way. I could have got stopped out instantly. Price can rally, and then I look really smart. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about it as I was entering the position. All right. Well, let's see how things develop. Maybe we get a TP1 out of this.